Last time on Tales from VANA'DIEL, the forces of Sandoria moved south, destroying all who stood in their path. They surrounded the Republic of Bastok and demanded their surrender. However, on the Konschtat Highlands, using the terrain to their advantage, the Republic of Bastok was able to defeat the mighty Kingdom of Sandoria with their impressive military tactics and superior firepower. A helpless King Rayjuk retreats back to the north, swearing revenge on the Bastokan people. Will he have his revenge, or will Bastok look to finally finish off Sandoria and conquer the lands for themselves? Find out on today's exciting episode of Tales from VANA'DIEL. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Moghouse, and yes, it is finally another episode of Tales from VANA'DIEL. That Dragon Ball Z inspired intro goes out to Andrigan, miss you buddy. Now, I actually recorded this episode a really long time ago, and according to the voiceover track, the edit was finalized in February 2019. That's almost a year ago, so I'm really sorry that this series has been on such a hiatus, but we're back and there are many tales to tell. So let's pick up where we left off. Sandoria had its elven ass handed to it in the Second Battle of Konschtat, being whooped by the forces of Bastok, and King Rayjuk returns to Sandoria and wants to raise an army in order to gain revenge. To tell the tale of what happens, we're going to follow the quest called A Timely Visit, which is quite possibly one of the greatest side quests in all of Final Fantasy XI. If you thought time travel was only introduced in Wings of the Goddess, you're in for a bit of a shock. We start in southern Sandoria with the lowly gateguard Derequin, who has heard that the Scepter Royales has been stolen. Now, the Scepter Royales is bestowed to each king upon his coronation by the ffxi. The ffxi is the head of the Temple of Altana, which is kinda similar to the Pope in the Catholic Church. Now, in current day VANA'DIEL, the Temple Knights are theoretically under the command of the king, but any large-scale mobilization requires the ffxi's permission, so the scepter has massive importance to Sandoria. When approached by a Temple Knight, Derequin proposes indirectly that he may be able to assist in finding the scepter, but the knight thinks he's putting the player forward to help, and so you are instructed to head to Lethane Plateau in hot pursuit of the thief. At the bottom of a ravine, just outside Ordel's caves, we encounter another Temple Knight, who says the thief is just inside, but instead, a royal knight called Vjortul appears from the caves. Vjortul explains he is following orders of King Rayjuk and is on his way to take the Scepter Royales to the Chateau d'Orugi in order to deliver it to Prince Felanon. Believing Vjortul must have some involvement in the scepter's theft, the Temple Knights arrest him and take him back to Sandoria. We return to Sandoria where Philoné, an elven resident of Sandoria, inquires with Derequin of the situation with the thief, instructing the adventurer that the thief is no criminal and must be helped. Her husband Roido, a Bastokan Hume, excuses his wife's behaviour and takes her home. The player is then sent to Chateau d'Orugi to collect a reward, but that's not exactly what we get. Inside the chateau, we find that Halvar is interrogating Vjortul, who explains that 2 years after the Second Battle of Konschtat, King Rayjuk raised an army in Lethane Plateau and was preparing to advance once more on the Republic of Bastok. However, while Rayjuk was out with the Royal Knights plotting war, his brother, Prince Felanon, mobilized the Temple Knights and took control of the city. Vjortul was to deliver the Scepter Royales to Prince Felanon on King Rayjuk's orders. Rayjuk would then abdicate the throne, providing the city was released from military control. But this is only half true, and we'll come to that. Halvar becomes incredibly impatient because everything he's hearing has happened 200 years ago, and demands Vjortul take his delusions elsewhere. But as he leaves, Vjortul reveals his full name to be Vjortul Kafio, which prompts even further outrage from Halvar. He knows that name to be a hero of Sandoria who ended the civil war between the Royal and Temple Knights 200 years ago. And Kafio may also be a familiar sounding surname for anyone who watched the last episode, but we'll also get to that as well. Confused as to where or even when he is, Vjortl leaves. Vjortl encounters Derequin, who explains to him that several years after the Second Battle of Konschtat, Prince Felanon took control of Sandoria with the intention of making peace with Bastok. Of course, his brother King Rejug is intent on revenge, and it is this power struggle that leads to the civil war. Vjortl then asks about himself, and is stunned to discover that he is to become a hero of Sandoria during the time of the civil war, and that even to this day he is one of the most famous people in their history. We then visit Philoné, whom we met earlier, and Vjortl walks in believing it to be his house, and mistakes Philoné for his wife, Nafi. Roido, Philoné's husband, returns at this point to the dismay of Vjortl. He is utterly disgusted that a Hume Bastokan would dare set foot in the holy city of Sandoria, let alone some filthy Bastoka, that's his words not mine, be living in his very house. A confused Vjortl takes his leave, contemplating where he is and if in fact it's possible that he's been catapulted through time. Roido now requests your help in recovering the Scepter Royales. Everyone wants a piece of this thing, it seems. But Philoné explains that her younger brother, Milisharal, whose name I am almost certainly butchering, was the one who stole the scepter, and that is why she approached us earlier thinking it was he who had been captured. She explains further that the Pierre Errant, the gemstone affixed to the scepter itself, contains a mysterious power, which is why the scepter carries such importance to Sandoria, and that's why it's passed down through generations of royalty. Roido plans to recover the scepter and return it to Chateau d'Origi to avoid Milisharal being captured or worse. At first, Philoné resists this plan, simply referring to the request of an ancestor, but is quickly convinced by her husband it is for the best, to aid her brother, and furthermore, to do so, Roido suggests that we will need the help of a seasoned knight. The adventurer and Roido talk to Derequin, but Derequin isn't exactly what Roido had hoped for when he said seasoned knight. But who should approach them? Vjortl, who now declares himself as the ancient hero of Sandoria in the world of the future. He's beginning to believe he is destined to become this hero, that he has travelled through time, and he even begins to give himself superhero-like names such as Thunderbringer, but eventually settles on calling himself the Obsidian Bolt. Now accepting his hero role, Vjortl offers to help with the plan to recover the Scepter Royales, but not without a few more jabs at Bastok, saying the people of Bastok are vulgar and uncouth and should be despised by any upstanding citizen of the noble Sandoria. Roido explains that Milisharal would have taken the scepter through Ramper's tomb and hidden it in Jugna Forest. Vjortl agrees to accompany the Bastokan, well, providing that Roido doesn't actually speak to him. We arrive in Jugna Forest and find Milisharal, where Roido tries to reason with him, saying they can simply return the scepter, dump it somewhere in the chateau where it will be found without anyone getting into any further trouble. Milisharal states that he simply cannot do that, he has an oath to fulfill, and that Roido can't understand because he has no idea the responsibility the Kafio name entails. Milisharal explains he's already retrieved the scepter and leaves the scene. Vjortl is now even more confused as to what on earth is going on, and once again insults Roido, calling him a miserable Bastoka, and is astounded that Roido would dare give him any orders. At this point, Roido essentially snaps. He's had enough of the discriminating remarks from an elven using the name of a great Sandorian hero. "Do you know what happened, Vjortl?" Roido baits the elven. "Do you know of the hero that died in battle trying to save the future of Sandoria and Bastok? That man was Vjortl Kafio, the man who gave his life to protect Prince Felanon and his mission to forge a peace with Bastok. I don't care if you hate Bastokas or choose to call yourself Vjortl, but I will not hear you sully the name of the great knight who died for peace of our two nations." Vjortl scoffs. Death is a fate no knight fears, but he then asks Roido what he means by died for peace. Remember, Vizhortal is loyal to Rayzhug, who wants another crack at battling with Bastok. He's not one for dying for the sake of peace. Roido explains that King Rayzhug was unable to take the city back from Prince Felanon, and instead plotted to assassinate him. But the assassination was foiled by Vizhortal Kafio, who was mortally wounded, saving the prince. Stunned by this revelation, Vizhortal himself reveals he was headed to deliver the scepter to Prince Felanon and kill him while he was there. How could it be true? How could the plan have changed so dramatically? We return to Sandoria, to the home of Philoné and Roido, where Vizhortal explains that he had broken into the royal book vault and read pages of what happened to him 200 years ago, and that what Roido had told him was true. He is to die saving Prince Felanon. He explains that the Kafio bloodline stems back to the founding of Sandoria. That's why he was entrusted with delivering the scepter, and that's why he should be trusted by the king to carry out the assassination. Vizhortal is now tortured by this knowledge, as he simply cannot work out why one minute he's going to kill the prince, and in the next he's saving him, and furthermore, he dies for the sake of peace between Sandoria and Bastok. None of that makes sense to him. At this point, Roido returns home, explaining the Temple Knights have picked up the trail of Milisharal. They haven't caught him yet, but they know he will be headed to Ordel's caves in order to carry out his oath. Roido pleads with Vizhortal for aid, but once more, Vizhortal snubs Roido simply for being Bastokan. Roido questions him as to why he must hate Bastok so much, and it is then revealed that Vizhortal's father was killed in the Second Battle of Konschtat. Not only that, in the last video I explained that during the battle a ceasefire was called so the two nations could recover their dead, and it was Vizhortal's father, the late Count Kafio, that was shot in the back of the head by ffxi during the ceasefire. Vizhortal holds Bastok responsible for the deaths of everyone he holds dear. Bastok is the ultimate enemy to him. Philoné tries to reason with him. Bastok essentially lost as much as Sandoria. Both sides lost loved ones. The thing he should hate is war itself, and then she makes one key statement that hits home with Vizhortal. Do you not find it strange? We are all children of Altana, and yet there is hostility and conflict among us. Nafi, Vizhortal's wife, whom Philoné resembles, once asked him, why must the people of Sandoria and Bastok despise each other, even though we are all children of Altana? Philoné explains that she had previously lived in Bastok and had experienced hatred from those who saw Elvens as the enemy, but there were also kind and caring souls like Roido who treated her as an equal. She believes that all races should be free from the barriers of prejudice and ignorance, and that Vizhortal himself can also find peace. Just outside Ordel's caves, the Temple Knights prepare to apprehend Milisharal. However, Vizhortal appears from the caves and tells them that the thief has escaped through another exit, and so the Temple Knights leave to investigate. Vizhortal recognises where they are, and then discovers Milisharal, who hands in the scepter royales. He reveals he is to give the scepter to the first knight he meets on this day, at this time, in this place, and the person that asked him to do it is Vizhortal Kafio. He explains the oath was made to a distant ancestor and then passed down from generation to generation. It's at this moment that Vizhortal realises that the boy in front of him and his sister Philoné must be his descendants of the Kafio family, and that he would need to be given the scepter at this precise moment in order to use the Pierre Errant gemstone within it and travel back to his own time. The Temple Knights are now fast approaching, and Vizhortal tells them to flee. Roido, however, insists on staying in order to at the very least stall the knights so that Milisharal can escape. He explains he does this because he does not care about race or bloodline, he simply needs to protect his family. He then states to Vizhortal, Bastok, Sandoria, none of that is important. Don't you understand? Surely you have someone you would die to protect, no matter the consequences. Vizhortal knows now what he must do, and explains he can save everyone. Vizhortal tells Roido that he realises the error of his ways, that Bastokas are not to be so easily dismissed, and that there is something to Prince Felanon's reasoning, and that he cannot allow the prince to be assassinated. He says, "It is just like last time. These caves are responding in some way to the Pierre Errant. Did you know that this place was once known as the Shrine of Endless Travels? There is nothing to fear. Please let Philoné know that I need no thanks. I already have my reward. I am the Obsidian Bolt. Such deeds are my reason for living." And with that, Vizhortal vanishes, and the scepter is now laying on the ground. Unfortunately, Milisharal is still apprehended for his part in the theft of the scepter, and is taken away by the Temple Knights. Back in Sandoria, Roido is apologising to Philoné for failing to protect her brother, when her brother rushes in exclaiming that Vizhortal was in fact the actual Vizhortal Cafio of legend. Halvar arrives with a sealed letter written by Prince Felanon himself that has been passed down through the royal family with orders for it to be opened this year. The letter states that Milisharal would steal the Scepter Royales, but neither he or those that accompanied him are to be charged with any crime, as requested by Vizhortal Cafio. It was written that these people would sustain the good relationships between Bastok and Sandoria. The will of Prince Felanon, a direct ancestor of the current royal family, is incontestable, meaning everyone gets off scot-free. Halvar then tells them of the Pierre Errant, the gemstone within the Scepter Royales. Following Vizhortal's actions and the prevention of Prince Felanon's assassination, the prince saw a vision of the future within the gemstone where the two nations were finally at peace. Prince Felanon would then go on to surrender to King Rayzhug and give him back control of the city, under the condition that the Temple Knights would not be held responsible for taking over the capital. The prince was then imprisoned in Bostono Ubele, as it was an official stance that the blood of the royal family must never be spilt no matter the crime. 3 years later he escaped, which sparks a huge civil war between the Temple Knights and the Royal Knights that lasts for 100 years. But what of Vizhortal himself? Well, Halvar explains that he dies while saving the prince, but he notes it's strange that his grave has never been found. Saving the prince would surely have earned him a suitably resplendent tomb. Halvar's also impressed that the bloodline of Vizhortal is still flourishing within the capital city today, but Philoné remarks that until recently, they were residents of Bastok and had been for several generations. Halvar then has a brainwave. There is literature that tells of a knight who organised Prince Felanon's escape and later took refuge in Bastok, and apparently this knight signed his name as, you guessed it, the Obsidian Bolt. So the ultimate hater of Bastok ended up living out his final days in the city. So there you have it, an absolute cracker of a quest. Tons of lore and history in it, and whoever was responsible for writing that storyline did an amazing job. There is so much to it, there's so many themes and depth, it's just so well written, it's amazing, and if you haven't done it already, you should go out of your way to do it because it's fantastic. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one, but for now, take care.